by where we don't seem to talk about this issue because no one is doing anything about it. No successive governments have actually decided they're going to deal with the small matter. It's not really a small matter, is it? Of young men from all sorts of countries with no alignments to our own, getting in boats, crossing the channel, shacking up here. And guess what? Being given lovely hotel rooms. Apparently, in the run-up to Christmas, the Delta Marriott hotel on the outskirts of Warwick, normally packed with families and works parties. Instead, four-star hotel is being used to house migrants. That's right. It was once advertised as the perfect location for tourists visiting Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon. It says that it's got a restaurant with a menu drawn up by a Michelin-starred chef, no less. Well, that's OK. If you've broken into the country illegally, whatever your intent, you can just be put there. Isn't that nice? Let's speak now to Stephen Woolfe, who's migration expert, former MEP, director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Every time I see videos circulating online of where asylum seekers are being housed, I think, what was wrong with what they did in Greece, where they had these huge encampments? You know, what was wrong with saying you don't get a four-star hotel with a restaurant and a little pay packet and a dental appointment and a doctor's appointment? You get put into mass accommodation because you've broken into the country illegally. Where's the deterrence?
Oh, good afternoon, Alex. There we go again. It's where's the deterrent? There is no deterrent, is there? And we know that, you know that, the general public knows it, and actually politicians know that, but they're just too dishonest to actually get on the airways and admit that they have no deterrent policy. The closest we got was Rwanda. We know that that was tentatively working by the numbers of people that were suddenly deciding to escape to the Republic of Ireland. And we also are aware that it was such a pressure point that you had so many NGOs and charities and trade unionists attempting to bring it down. And what do we have? What do we have? We have all those Shakespeare-loving migrants who are now across the channel. I'm sure they'll be delighted to go and pop down to Shakespeare and listen to to pop in and see a bit of Shakespeare, because that's what they all are. Remember, they're all doctors and scientists, not really low-end workers that we know that they really are.
Well, this is the thing. It seems to me now, where is the deterrent? If you can come over to the United Kingdom from whichever country you came from, and you're going to be put up in a hotel, you're going to be fed, and on the side, I'm pretty sure a lot of these people are working in black market jobs. There's no control over where they go. We give them pocket money and an allowance. If they're not being fed, they get extra money to then feed themselves. And I'm sure a lot of them end up delivering Uber Eats and stuff like that, or, you know, takeaway meals, or working in dodgy takeaways, or, you know, washing cars. This is the problem, isn't it? It's now a lifestyle choice. If you're coming from a poor country, but you're going to be put up in a lovely four-star hotel somewhere else, and at the same time you get to earn pocket money in the black market, you're going to do it, aren't you? It's a better existence than most of our working class people have. And I don't understand why we have to give them such luxury accommodation. I'm pretty sure, I've lived in lots of countries around the world. I'm pretty sure if I went back to live in Kenya and didn't have a visa and said I want to stay here now, they'd probably put me in some horrible detention centre that I wouldn't particularly enjoy. What part of human rights legislation says if someone breaks into your country illegally, you have to roll out the red carpet?
Well, actually, it isn't the ECHR this time. It's the UN Refugee Convention, which we signed. And that refugee convention applies to each country, and it says that you have to accommodate them, provide legal advice, give them health and education. And because we have the very unusual aspect of 2 points in our country that differ to many across even parts of Europe, which is the National Health Service, and also we have accommodation that's utilised by councils, you know, low-end council housing that we have to give them what we give our local people, because that's what the UN Refugee Convention says. Now, you're right that there is nothing that stops us having tented communities up and down the country, or even in one place. I mean, I often argued once that when King Charles was Prince Charles, he said that we were very cruel not to be able to be putting people into housing. And I said, well, you have an estate in Scotland the size of Liverpool. Why don't we put a tented community up there with everybody that comes off the boats? We won't do it because for many, many reasons, as you've seen, these hotel chains, the companies that are involved in it are making billions. 8 million a day, 3 billion a year being paid on hotels. There's money in it. Just follow the money.
There's a lot of money in it. Now, interestingly, France's Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau is ready for a showdown with the UK, apparently, over channel crossings, demanding that the British government opens more legal asylum routes. He wants a comprehensive deal with Britain and the whole of the EU, rather than UK giving more money for the French to police their own beaches. Now, we've heard this before. This idea that we've got to take a quotient of these so-called asylum seekers. I don't see why we should have to. We should just defend our borders. But then you always hear this argument from the left. We need more legal routes. We need more legal routes. How would they even work? Where are you going to put these things? You're going to put a special migrant processing centre in Sudan in a war zone and say, oh, if you want to leave Sudan, you can come here. Well, guess what? Every single person who went to that processing centre, according to the UN, would have every single right to claim asylum. I don't understand. No one can ever explain to me how a legal asylum route would work. If you just go to the worst parts of the world, if you can go and say you can claim asylum somewhere because homosexuality is outlawed, that's 3/4 of countries on planet Earth. I mean, none of this is workable. None of it.
We know it's not workable, but this is not an idea that's just new for Bruno. We've seen the mayors recently in Calais and around the surrounding areas demanding exactly the same thing. What I find interesting about this, Alex, is that this kind of language that's coming from various people in France all seems to be kind of organised. And I suspect this is actually the front runner. They've been organised in order to be the front runner for the Labour Party to say that we're entering into a historic deal with France to enable this to actually happen. And what I suspect it will do in parts of Europe, we will have these processing centres, particularly in France, where those asylum seekers in Calais will just make the application there and then we'll let them in. It's as simple as that. And you're quite right. In many other countries, I've heard all those on the left who argue for these safe routes to actually open them up in Libya, to open them up in Iran and Iraq and Somalia and these countries, because they feel it's necessary. If they did that, you and I know that it wouldn't just be 20 or 30 or 40,000 coming across. It would be hundreds of thousands every few months. And that's the reality. We just can't cope with a population that we've estimated now will be 80 million by the year 2035.
I mean, this is the thing. Since time immemorial, there has been war, there has been famine, there's been persecutions, there's been tyrannical regimes. There's always a big handful of countries in the world which are being run by ne'er-do-wells and really making their populations suffer. And yes, we have sympathy for those people. But I don't see how suddenly turning around and saying, well, actually, countries that have stability must take in everybody from countries where there's instability actually solves the problem at all. I just want to talk to you about the youth mobility scheme, because I keep hearing about it. It pops up every 5 seconds. We know that Sir Keir Starmer said, oh, I want better trade relations with the EU. And the thing currently being mooted by Brussels is the idea that Britain signs up to a youth mobility programme. Now, it seems to be packaged as students. Oh, you get to go and study wherever you want. Perhaps that means we have to pay their tuition fees if they're EU students coming here instead of them paying foreign students' fees. My worry about this, though, is it's basically by the back door, countries like Germany and Spain and France and Italy, who have had far bigger inward illegal migratory flows than I have, who may have granted asylum or residency to some of these people, trying to offload them. Because if a mobility scheme involves people under the age of 35, I don't think it's going to be a load of Germans coming to work in our bars or French people coming to study at our universities. I think they want to see the mass movement of people who have come into the country from elsewhere, and they don't particularly want them in their own countries, and they're quite happy to see them cross the channel and come here.
I absolutely agree that the youth mobility scheme is going to be for people who are aged 18 to 30, or in some countries 18 to 35. Hardly a youth if you're 35, in my view. And they will be able to come into the country, providing they have a casual application fee of a couple of £100, some savings, £2,500 allegedly, and a fee of £776. I think they will be able to find that pretty easily. If they're willing to be able to find £4,500 to be able to just get across the channel, they'll find that money really easily. And what I have a fear about, Alex, is that when we watched Boris Johnson in the recent BBC kind of program about immigration, he admitted that he opened the doors to mass migration despite Brexit, because he said we needed everybody to do the jobs. And I believe that we have a corporate industry here of large businesses who are saying bring in as many people who have cheap labor to fill our jobs in London, fill the jobs like, you know, delivery vans, etc., etc., because then we can keep wages down, and it suits the government because it will keep inflation down and increase GDP. That's why they're going to do it. And finally, I also believe it's going to be part of the negotiated deal that Keir Starmer wants to have to bring us closer to the European Union and break Brexit.